All right. I cannot wait to introduce you to our guest today, Eric Hewson. He is a seasoned professional sports executive and the founder of the Same Here global mental health movement. With over 20 years in the industry, his career includes roles at the NBA League Office and senior management positions with teams such as the Chicago Sky, Phoenix Suns, New Jersey Devils, and Florida Panthers. After experiencing a severe mental health crisis that left him bedridden for over 2.5 years, Eric discovered healing through holistic and integrative approaches. This journey inspired him to establish Same Here Global, aiming to normalize mental health conversations worldwide. Eric is a certified behavioral health coach working one on one with clients nationwide. Today, Eric is a sought after global keynote speaker and program developer, collaborating with organizations ranging from professional sports teams to educational institutions and government agencies. I also consider Eric a friend and a colleague. We have linked arms for the last 6+ years in this nonprofit space of doing this work to disrupt the conversations that are happening around mental health and to empower and equip people with the tools to be able to help them heal and thrive. So Eric and I, in this part one, we're going to call it, of multi-part series, explore his childhood and the role of sport in his life and how what he learned, really kind of the build up to his 2.5 year mental health crisis that was the catalyst really for what's become. And our journeys have parallel tracks, and we kind of connected through a story of a youth athlete who played hockey in the Chicago area. Morgan was her name, or is her name. And she was recently removed from her club, and ESPN did a piece on it. And long story short, Morgan had donated the money refund given from her club because she was navigating mental health challenges, and they booted her out, gave her a refund. She took that money and donated it to Same Here. And so it was in that piece from ESPN that I was like, okay, let me read more about this Same Here global piece and this idea of we're all in this together and all of us struggle. We'll all struggle at times, and we're all human. And so that was kind of the beginning of what's become an incredible partnership and collaboration and being able to be out in the world and doing this work. So grateful to bring you this conversation. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts and reflections as you listen. And yeah, let's just get to it. Until next time, here we go. All right. Welcome, Eric. It's great to have you on here and be working together in this capacity today. So thank you for coming on and humoring me on this Sport Pairing podcast.
I love that you're getting the effort going. So let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah. So we're going to start by kind of kicking it back to childhood and cultural upbringing and background and just kind of how that shaped who you are and who you become. I know it's a really big question, but
I'd say I enjoy the question because, and we joked about it before you told me about the podcast. Like most of the questions that I get are dive right into like, tell me your story, mental health related, and how you got to start in the organization. So it's nice kind of like to dip into another part of my brain and try to think about that. I was obsessed with competition from a young age, and there's probably mental health aspects to that we can get into why. I just didn't know at the time. So it's better to talk about it of what I was thinking when I was a child. And it was like,
but take us into dynamics. Where were you in line?
So I'm the middle of three boys.
Yeah.
My older brother, before he got sick, which is part of my mental health story, he was a good athlete. And so primarily like baseball was his main sport that he was pretty good at. So I have memories at a young age of going to his games, but I was kind of like the soccer for whatever reason. When you're young, soccer is a very popular sport in the team sport realm. So I was bigger than most kids. I was pretty fast. So I got like picked to be into travel soccer teams at an early age. And so funny enough, the sport that like I excelled the most in over time, which was basketball, I didn't really play organized basketball until 4 or 5 years after I started playing soccer. So soccer, you start playing at like 5 years old.
Yeah.
I didn't start playing. And my parents, neither of them are athletic.
Okay. I was curious if they played sports. Okay. And what what that dynamic was of
My
encouraging
dad,
it, or how was it viewed?
They're very big cheerleaders and they love coming to games, and not cheerleaders from the standpoint of vocal, which is interesting. Like just always were there and always just supportive, and like you could tell enjoyed coming, but weren't like loud and obnoxious and in the face of coaches or anything like that, which I'm sure is part of this overall discussion. But like my dad if like I would have to ask him, can we play catch? If and then like he threw the ball back to me like underhand. Like that's
Yeah.
literally what we're talking. And my mom was not athletic at all, and yet you have three boys that love sports
Yeah.
and that are all athletic. So like I don't know where that switched on
Was it in
the
the culture of the community that you grew up in?
yeah, I mean, like, yes, but I like just at a young age,
Yeah.
again, earliest memories are my brother, because he was older than me, having friends over, and we would turn the basement into an indoor soccer field. And like, I was obsessed with, I would play 2-on-1 against them.
Oh my
And I
God.
wanted to beat both of them together. Or when we would play basketball in a non-organized way with my friends out in the street. The one thing, well, I'll say this from it's such a different generation than what it is now. You know, he grew up in the generation where people were bored in their house after school and they
Mm-hmm.
needed something to do. So every kid on the block, and we have a lot of kids on the block, came out in the middle of the street and we played roller hockey. I remember having the Milek goalie. I played goalie like with goalie pads, and then we had as people different people had their basketball hoops up, and we played football in the street. And the only thing that was annoying was that when cars would go by, it would stop
Right.
us from our really important game that we were playing. But like you didn't have to be the best athlete amongst the other kids that were there. We just wanted a lot of kids to play, and everyone
Mm-hmm.
kind of knew their role and their spot on the team, so to speak, when we were playing. So I love doing things like I'll give you a 10-point lead to 11 in basketball. And like I don't hope that doesn't come off as heady, like, oh, I was so
No,
much
it's
better
fun.
than
Yeah.
everybody.
Not
I
to me. Yeah.
I and maybe I don't want to dip too much in the mental health side of things because I talk about it too much, but I know what we're going to get there. But like I think sometimes when you're dealing with lack of connection to other things because of some of the health things that family members are going through,
Mm-hmm.
you find purpose and meaning in all the competition,
Mm-hmm.
and you're able to lose yourself in that. So like I was also always searching for like, okay, who can come out and play right now that I can get a game going against and see what the score is, and make up some game that helps us. And then I'd have my parents come out at 10 o'clock at night, like, where are you? Like, come
Oh my
back in.
goodness. You're way past the lights coming on in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
No,
without a
it's
doubt.
so I was just having a conversation about that with Jen, and this idea of like free play, like just that time to like go out and play unstructured, and it is, and I think we can get there, but just this structure and system that we're in now, or like one kid here, one kid there, so you look around the neighborhood and it's like really quiet,
I've
like
been back. I mean,
around the
my
kids.
parents still live in the same house, and I've been back to their house countless times, and I never see kids play in the street
Out
ever.
in the neighborhood.
Like
Mm-hmm.
not one. Like same street, same exact street.
Mm-hmm.
You could say, oh, is that because there's not as many kids? No, because there's families that are all the same age that
Mm-hmm.
my parents were when we were growing up. It's just the kids are on their phone talking to each other on their phone. That's a topic that's, yeah, you could beat a dead horse with that topic, but
Well,
the
that, and then we haven't talked about Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt's work in
yeah.
his book. So for parents that haven't read it, I really like but he does. Have you read that? I can't remember if we
I've read like the first half because of like plane travel, and then like
yeah.
put it
So, but the
down.
cultural, like the changing of just like this, like in the fear of, I remember growing up, I don't know if you like drinking milk, looking at the back of the carton with a missing kid, like in that generation of, and being inundated with constant fear of not allowing kids to actually go out and explore. So it's kind of a common, yeah, he talks about the combination of the cultural factors in addition to this like device that we all have.
But now that you're bringing that up, I mean, there was so much more back then, even with the milk carton stuff. Initially, there was so much more of an allowance to go and play without
Right.
fear. Like we would get on roller blades, right? Because that was the thing to be able to move around before you had bikes,
Mm-hmm.
to like roll to go play hockey the peninsula over, which is a mile and a half away, which
Mm-hmm.
for parents now would freak them out. Like you're going all the way on your own without us taking you, right? And then there was a town park once we started riding bikes. It was on the border of Merrick and Freeport, were the two towns,
Mm-hmm.
two very different towns demographically, but like it was really beautiful. Like black kids and white kids would play together on the same court. I never thought anything of that in terms of like difference of race. I just, oh, well, that's just a different town. We don't really interact with them a lot in the school district, but that's awesome that we're playing together. But I think the two things that stand out as a child were there was, do you remember this, I think this is a made up thing to like get us to focus on what's around us, the man in the white van,
Oh my God, yes.
right? I mean, so like, was that a real person
Right.
or like, and so that was like, I think that was a thread that was thrown at us to go, yeah, you can go in free play, but also
Mm-hmm.
just keep your eye out for people who are looking around that may be trying to be nefarious and do things when you're playing. Um, and then the other thing was like, because it was so old school and there wasn't technology, there were those block parent signs that were in the windows. So
Mm-hmm.
like you were taught to trust that if you're in trouble when you're walking home or rollerblading home or biking home, that like that's a house that you can trust because his parent has raised their hand and said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for you. Right.
That's new to me. I've never heard of that.
You've never seen
Was
that
it a
with like
literal sign?
it was a literal sign that was like a
Yeah.
stick figure with a round, just circle head and then
Yeah.
a stick figure body and it said block parent.
Who
And
knew?
so,
I've never heard of that. That's
oh
really
yeah, yeah.
cool. Like that's the sense of community, right? So there was this kind of unstructured play, and I know I'm jumping forward, but you end up playing the sport. You don't start right away in college. So how when the competitive juices were always flowing, it sounds like, well, I'm a middle child, right? There's so many pieces to this, and yeah, take us through just that, like your journey in sport, and you feel free to share because what you talked about with the challenges that you went through and watched growing up, like you can weave it in now, or you can talk about it later. I'll leave it up to you, but just kind of taking us
I
on that
mean,
journey from.
I always I loved coaches that were hard on me. I mean,
Mm.
so that's, I know that's not, necessarily in fashion right now.
Well, speak
But
to it though. But did you know they cared?
yeah, it was coaches who were as fiery and competitive as I was, right?
Mm.
And so I was going to listen to what they were going to tell me
Mm-hmm.
that was going to make me better. Obviously, there were decisions, and we'll get into some of them that still kind of, in terms of things I hold on to, that upset me a lot, in terms of coaching decisions. Um, but early on, when you're in a small town relative to, okay, many towns all competing for the same spot, or
Mm-hmm.
now different states all competing for the
Mm-hmm.
same spot on college teams or what have you, if you're good at a young age and you're tall at a young age, like you're getting those spots and it's not very political. At least back then it wasn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I got picked early to be like, now memories are coming back to me. So I got picked early to be on the travel soccer team.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm lefty, so it's weird. I kick with my right foot, but I throw with my left.
Mm-hmm.
So like everyone's like, "Oh, baseball, like let's get him into baseball." So in fourth grade, when most people made the majors in our little league in sixth grade, I was playing majors in fourth grade,
Mm-hmm.
right? So again, baseball and soccer now, I'm not even playing basketball yet at this point.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and those are my two main sports. Um, and so I get introduced to basketball more because it was an easy sport to play recreationally
Mm-hmm.
at the parks, in our driveways, what have you. And I just like, there was a flow to basketball that you don't get in other sports. This is what I mean by that. Soccer, there's 11 players on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, you're running up and down the field a lot, but your impact on what's happening on the field is oftentimes not as apparent because you're waiting for the play to come to you in certain aspects. A true soccer purist might argue that and say, no, like every position you're at in the field is creating space for everyone else. That's not what I'm meaning. What I'm meaning is my involvement in the actual
Right.
play itself could be a bit removed at time. Baseball, same thing.
Mm.
When I pitched, and they called me like Wild Thing when I was, even though
Jeez.
Rick Vaughn was not, because I could throw really hard, but sometimes
Uh-oh,
the,
hitting
the
people.
yeah, sometimes my control was not the greatest, and so, but okay, when you're in the field, you're not
Right.
really involved in the
It's why
play.
my kids stopped playing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
true, it's a real thing when it comes to those other sports.
Mm-hmm.
Why do kids stop playing? But then what I found in basketball, back to like being competitive, is like, wait a second, every time the ball goes up, which happens on every single possession, I
Mm-hmm.
can try to outwork someone and get a rebound. This is the
Mm-hmm.
greatest thing ever, right? Like even to the point where this is non-structured basketball, but when I worked for the NBA, there was this I was going to call it a ride, but like NBA Jam session is what we do during All Star, where the fans get to come to this fan interactive amusement park. And because I was working for the NBA at the time, we had unfettered access when the fans weren't in there. And so this is the great. I want to buy this when I get older and I have a house. Right? There was a trampoline on the bottom. There was
Jeez.
a wall in the middle, like a netted wall. And then behind you was a hoop that was 14 feet high, and behind the other person was a hoop that was 14 feet high. So
Oh, so
you're
like
trying to
tennis,
jump
trampoline, basketball?
trampoline basketball, trying to dead in the other person as you're going up. You're up in the air trying to block them as they're trying to shoot. It was like the perfect example of nonstop competition between
Yeah.
two people in a momentum way where it doesn't
Yeah.
stop. It's also why I love ping pong.
Yeah.
But like ping pong to me is more active. I'm involved in every
Yeah.
single play than soccer is, right? So I think that's why I fell in love with basketball is
Mhm.
because okay, I can learn different nuances of hitting shots or contorting my body in certain ways to get to the basket. But then I could also learn how to hit people with passes. Then I could also learn how to cut and get open when someone
Mhm.
else had the ball. Then, if I'm not involved in any of those things, as long as the shot goes up, I can go and grab the rebound. And oh, by the way, if the ball's stolen and I'm not involved in the play, I'll run back and I'll try to
Mhm.
foul the guy before he gets to the basket, right? So basketball to me was always the ultimate example of like you try harder than anyone else, you're gonna excel in it. And I didn't
Mhm.
necessarily find that in all the other sports.
Mhm.
Even in a football, right? Which my friends laugh at me because I was the biggest kicker that there was because I was a soccer
You
player.
kicked. Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
Well, and coaches should hear this because this happened to me and it's messed up. And it's a coach that's no longer with us, so I feel bad talking about him. But his name was Coach Doust. So my entire childhood, like early days of playing soccer and then middle school, we had
Mhm.
an undefeated team 2 seasons in a row in middle school. I was playing on the travel teams. We were winning all these tournaments. So like I was the up and coming goalie in the town, let's say, right?
Mhm.
And then there was a guy, Rory, who was my backup in
Mhm.
every one of those. Great guy, like great family. I would sleep over his house all the time. We would have like
Mhm.
they didn't call them play dates that back then, but like hangouts all the time. And my brother had the Make a Wish trip
Mhm.
from his cancer, which was us flying out to Oakland to see Ricky Henderson play because that was his favorite player.
Mhm.
And it was during the time when the Yankees were playing Oakland, so it was like they found the perfect storm for us to go watch our
Mhm.
favorite team and meet our favorite player at the same time. Well, I'm going away with my family. My family can't change the trip of when Make a Wish is taking it unless I
Mhm.
stay back, right? Like I'm not
Mhm.
going on that trip. So with the first day of tryouts for soccer, which is the first season of the year, I missed
Mhm.
the first day of tryouts because of that. And
Mhm.
I never was given a chance to play. And Rory started the entire year, the entire 4 years. Like imagine
Mhm.
having a chance to be the starter on varsity from the
Mhm.
time you're a freshman on.
And
And
then
I
this
could do it.
real life, massive human thing you've mentioned just briefly for those that don't know your story, right? Like that your brother's battling cancer. You go on this Make a Wish trip. Like, where's the humanity in that? Yeah.
He and
Yeah.
I, I don't need to make this like controversial, but Irish Catholic guy, Jewish town,
Mm-hmm.
a very kind of like, oh, are things handed to kids in this town? I'm going to show them type of attitude
Mm-hmm.
about him. And the reason I gave you the background on how much I loved coaches is I would do anything that a coach told me to do.
Mm-hmm.
Take religion like religion wasn't even on my mind at that time.
Right.
Like, but in his mind, his way of getting back was to do
Mm-hmm.
this, right? That's just how I still interpret it and feel it energetically to this day. It's like, oh, I'm not going to have parents give me a hard time about anything. I'm
That
going to
like rigidity around you miss it. Like no, the not just no
there's
flexibility in
no
that.
and again, if
Did
I
you ever talk about it, or like did you ever like? I mean, now we have all the tools and skills. That's partly why I do the work I do is to help support young people. Like, did a conversation ever come, or it was just not talked about? And then this thing that you
I
loved that you were doing was gone.
so
Yeah.
in an overprotective parent type of way, my dad, who was a principal, went to
Mm-hmm.
just have a conversation with him to ask him about it, to say like my son didn't have a choice in the matter, and he
Yeah.
shut my dad down right away. And my dad's not in your face controversial person, so my dad was like, I had a conversation with him. He really wasn't giving me a chance to get a word in. Then, as I became a junior and senior, and I was winning scholar athlete awards, and I was captain of basketball, by the way, I was kicking for the football team and kicking ass in that and hitting 3 field goals in games. I'm not trying to say that again in a heady way. I'm trying to say that as like, here's this guy watching that's what the hopeful success I could have had for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a fan of our basketball team. He's coming as a coach and watching us. He's a fan of our football team, and he's coming on Saturdays to watch us play or Fridays to watch us play. And yet he and I were able to have a conversation, and I was able to say, like, it was messed up, coach.
Oh, you did have a
Yeah,
conversation.
I like just like that. I was like, Coach Dallas, it was messed up. Like my whole career, I didn't get to experience what I worked for as a child, like all up to that point in the sport that I loved, that I was picked for, like not even, but unbeknownst to me, it wasn't like, oh, I wanted to beat other people out. It was just I excelled in that position. And then the rug got pulled out from underneath me. And he made some comment like life has consequences sometimes, and then you learn from them, right? Like that was basically it. There was no discussion beyond that. So it's still like the feeling of thinking of coach in that way now still has that.
Oh, totally. It conjures it up. Well, I think you speak to the importance too of a coach. You know, and in this space, it's like married to a coach. Like I've been a coach. You want to humanize coaching. Like you want to humanize them as people, and at the same time, it is so important that they're aware of the impact they're having on young people. Like so important because it stay. You know, how many years later is it, and it still stays with you. And that idea of like, if you could go back, like, what would you tell that, knowing all the things you know now, what would you tell that version of you?
Well, it's hard because like when you say we hold on to it, the interesting thing about, the work that we do and what we know is it's not something that's apparent to me and on top of my mind every single day or even every single year, like unless these conversations happen. But clearly based on now discussing it and the way that it makes me feel, it lives inside of me. Right.
Right.
So it, his hard advice when I was a junior and senior is reality that sometimes you, for no reason other than that person has a vendetta against the town, against you in particular, against your situation, against whatever it is. I would have wish I was a little bit more mature when I was in 9th grade, but it was what it was, to be able to sit down with him and look him in the eye the way that my father attempted to do, which I wasn't there for that conversation, and explain to him exactly what, like now that I know how human beings
Right.
become hardened, and say, coach, like what about this is triggering you? Whether
And as a ninth grader capable. And I think sometimes too, it's like what I'm learning. So the work that we've done and we do together is like, I think it opens the door for compassion of understanding how our life experiences shape how we see the world, how we see each other and ourselves. And also sometimes, like you're saying, I'm like channeling like Greg, my mentor, because before this, Jen and I were talking, having that conversation about his impact. And it's like when he was talking to Tom Brady and coaching him and Desmond Howard, it's like, you want the starting spot, like you're not getting the starting spot, right? So it's like, how are you going to respond? You cannot control the coach. And I think that speaks to something that like we're naming something that is almost, it escapes us in the moment as parents, because first of all, like our kids' lives are not our lives. And secondly, there's going to be things that are outside of our control, like in things and systems and structures that are such that you kind of bump up against that. Like, what else could you have done? Okay, your dad attempted to talk. Like, what are our other choices? And I've heard from parents, and actually in particular, like one example in basketball is like the coach, they've tried the AD, they've tried all these things and like it's not getting anywhere. And at that point, right? So if you could go back, would you do anything different, or would you? Right.
I guess I was, because of the stuff I went through, my brother, like it matures you at a young enough age that like what I did for that soccer team, I don't want to make it like, oh, but like my role on that soccer team was when I'm on the sideline, I'm their biggest cheerleader.
So did you continue to play all 4 years?
Yeah, played all 4 years, but keep in mind, I was a football player at the same time.
Yeah.
So I had the cool thing of being able to stay that like I'm playing 4 sports in 3 seasons, right? And so, okay, we had the most successful football team we'd ever had my junior and senior year, like in the history of Kennedy football, right? And just in terms of wins, losses. That's not saying a lot because like it's extremely successful team, but like, wow, we were on the plus side in wins and losses and, like going for playoff spots and stuff. So, so that outlet was there. Like I still went to the football practices, even though I was only, and I did the drills and, did the all the different.
I can't believe they didn't recruit you on a different side of the field.
Yeah, well, I think that there was a little bit of politics there of also like, how can we allow someone who plays soccer to also be able to play this other position other than the position that's known for what kickers have? That would be my take on it. There were times like I ran in drills. I mean, my size would have been because I had soft hands. I should have been used as a tight end, right? Like that would have been, or a defensive end or something like that. But you look back. I think I'll take sports out of it and I'll put sports into it. Like we've talked about family dynamics. When you're a kid and you go to a family, Thanksgiving dinner, you're like, oh my God, the whole family's getting together. This is really cool. Everybody loves each other and I'm playing with the other kids. And then you don't realize that like this uncle hates that cousin. This one and their politics, they don't get along. These two have been estranged for a long period of time. Like you're completely oblivious to that as a kid. So your radar for the different dynamics of athletic director to coach to coach on the same team, coach to other coach on other teams, right? You're not necessarily, you think it's all about you.
Well, and age appropriately, really, right? As they're growing out of that in teen years. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes so much sense. And I wonder, like, what did you say to yourself if you can go back there and remember, like, how did you continue to show up and give your best effort and attitude and all those things when you weren't picked?
I always, because I was so competitive, like I always had this holding out hope that like, he'll see, right? And then like, okay, that didn't happen, right? Like there was clearly a vendetta that like I was not going to get that spot, right? And now that it's like coming back to me, because there were two open spots, the first 2 years I excelled and played really well on the JV team for 9th and 10th grade. It's just that this guy who's been backing me up my entire life is given the starting spot 9th and 10th grade. I'm not going to come in 11th grade and then be the starter after he's had him start for those 2 years. Football is a little different with quarterbacks. Like, okay, the quarterback, like, the coach is feeling pressure that they're not winning. Let's bring in the new guy who's been on the practice squad. Or soccer, like the goalie in that position relative to the rest of the field. Okay, what does it give, a one extra goal or a half of an extra goal? If he's loyal to someone because of the reasons why he was anti me for what I did, that was not going to change in a short period of time because I was excelling on the JV team, right? So I accepted, and at the same time was like, I'm still going to work harder than anyone else. I'm still going to show up all the time.
That's a part right there that's like can get lost. And then as a parent watching, I think what we see is just like over identifying, and it's like, well, I'm like, do I step in? Do I not step in? How do I handle this? Like instead of allowing the kid to navigate it themselves. And what lessons have you learned? Like what did that teach you? Like if we think about sport as a vehicle for honing these skills and that dynamic, what did that sharpen for you?
Patience, right? Understanding that things aren't going to be fair all the time, understanding that you still have a role on a team to play, understanding that even though you might not be contributing in the way that you believe you can contribute, it's still awesome if the team does well and you're doing your role to be a part of what that team is, right? Like all those things. And the weird thing is, like, I don't think I would have a different answer back then than what I have now. Like what I've learned in growing up, that intuition was there back then, to stick with it. I think my maturity level of my bitterness is probably what has gotten better, right? Like over time. Whereas then, like I was angry at him. Like there's no other way to describe it. Like
and your awareness of just like seeing humans.
Right.
So yeah.
I thought that he was a bad person for doing that, as opposed to he's a person who's dealing with stuff.
And so, has his baggage just like everybody else. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So you end up going and playing. You end up at an Ivy League school, right?
Yeah.
Playing basketball. So take us there and just that
Well, it's a
transition.
cool story. Like, so I wasn't recruited to play basketball at Cornell. I was actually recruited to kick.
No
um,
way. Yeah.
and I was too competitive to want to be on the sideline. So like the letters that I was getting and from Cornell, I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I meet with Scott Thompson was his name, the coach of Cornell basketball my freshman year. And he's like, yeah, we're going to have a tryout on this date. He's like, get in the best shape of your life. So I'm running up and down stadium stairs. I'm lifting weights. I'm going in the gym every day. I show up to the tryout. There's only 20 of us at the tryout, which is not that many. Like, oh, if one of us makes it, one of 20 is a lot better chance than one of 100. Or you
Mm-hmm.
try out at like Michigan State or one of those other schools. I'm sure there's way more kids trying out. And I remember we're doing layup lines to warm up, and Coach Thompson is having a Nerf football catch with his son on the sideline as we're doing layup lines. And I just remember one of the seniors like turns around to me and he goes, "That's not a good sign." So I'm like interpreting what he means by that. I'm like, I
Yeah.
think I know where he's going with this. So
Meaning he's not paying attention.
he's not paying attention. So
Mhm.
he blows the whistle, has us come and sit down on the baseline, like bleachers where the baseline was. He's like, "Gentlemen," and granted, this is a paraphrasing, but it stuck with me, so I'm sure it's pretty close to accurate. He's like, "Thank you for coming out. I recruit 13 to 15 to come play for this team, and I have to cut down to 12. We can't give out scholarships, and so it's promising kids that they're going to be able to come to school and play, and they're coming here for basketball. If I'm cutting one or two or three of them, I can't justify giving one of you a spot. So I thank you for coming and trying out." Now, this is after I had asked him,
Yeah.
and these other people had asked him about tryouts. Okay. And like after he's done saying that, he's not like, "Do you have any questions?" He just starts walking out with his son. So I'm a freshman. I'm keeping my mouth shut at this point. And the senior who had noticed that goes, "Coach, why do you have a tryout then?" And he just goes, "Division I requirement," and closes the door. Okay. So he was my coach freshman, sophomore, junior year. So I get into like the fun of school those first 3 years, and I'm like drinking and going out and having
Wait, how
fun.
is he your coach though? How'd you make the
Well,
team?
he no, you'll see. So like
Okay.
when I say I played college basketball, it's kind of like a Cinderella story in a not so exciting type of way. So those 3 years I didn't play. He was the coach of Cornell, not taking walk-ons. I don't have an opportunity.
Were you playing football? Did you play football?
No, I
No.
was playing rec league, like I was dominating rec league games, like in our and stuff like that. But I remember playing against like Donovan McNabb, like Syracuse came down
My goodness.
with their right, like it was fun like that. There was cool competition in that way. But so senior year, I get a call from this guy. And Cornell's big enough that you can get lost and not see someone that you've met freshman year. So a guy that I tried out with, who was a freshman, calls me. He's like, "This new coach Donahue, he's having a walk on tryout. You and I, it'd be a great story. You got to come try out with me." I'm like, "Dude," I am not in shape to be trying out the way that I was freshman year. But I was like, "When's a tryout?" He's like, "It's after Midnight Madness." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "You thought that the other guy didn't take it seriously? This guy wants us to have a tryout at 2 a.m. after Midnight Madness? Like, no, like I'm not. So I'm stubborn and I don't go. I wake up the next morning. I remember I went out that night, so I definitely was not in the best health mindset. And the guy called me. He's like, "Listen, this is serendipitous. The Midnight Madness went too long. They didn't have the tryout. They're having the tryout today at noon. Get your sneakers and come meet me down there." So I come. There's about 25 of us that try out. He and I are the two that make it.
Oh my god.
And so they formed like a JV team that had the young guys from that were
Yeah.
freshmen and sophomores from the varsity team play with us, and then we were part of the varsity team as well. But the pat on my back that I will give, if I have to give one, is so my friends decided to come to our first JV game because they're like they've been seeing me play in rec leagues and all this stuff, and like, "Oh, what would happen if you played like on the big stage?" So we play against Ithaca College's varsity team on the main court, but it's not considered a sanctioned game because it's and I had 40 points and 20 rebounds, like that exact number. And it was because I literally like was so amped up that I finally got to put sneakers on and a jersey on.
And go.
I would not let I don't think I hit a shot outside of 2 feet the whole night. Like I didn't even attempt to take a jump shot. It's like every time the ball was on the glass, I got it and I put it back in.
Oh my
And so Donahue comes up to me after the game. He's like, I wish I knew you as a freshman. I go, I wish you were here as a freshman. What you
Right.
just said to me was both the greatest compliment and the worst, like,
Yeah.
pain that I could feel at the same time, because it would have been awesome to play for you. And then he ends up staying with the team and takes him to the Sweet 16 against Kentucky a number of years later. So it was
That's so
cool.
fun.
And look, like, I'm 6'4", I'm not 6'8". So what my basketball career was going to be, when you play forward at 6'4" in D1, you're not going to be too dominant. But like,
Yeah.
it would have been
I
nice to have been more formal
like
for the
to
team.
now it's like we're talking 7 feet and over. I
Right.
just can't even wrap my brain around that. It's wild. So wow, but like the perseverance and this persistence and this drive that really wasn't even, maybe I'm missing, but wasn't even outcome based. It was like for the love of the game and the work and yeah, it just like that's what I
Well, but it's a combination of the two, because when we go to the mental health story, like, part of it was, is there an inner drive in me that loves competition, that, just has that, dog on a bone mentality, that I'll dive on a
yeah.
loose ball before anyone else will. But then also the meaninglessness of life that comes
Mm-hmm.
about when your brother's sick and you're
Mm-hmm.
fearful of, well, what else is there? Like, if we're just here and we die,
Mm-hmm.
what else is there? So I think I had to, like, find purpose in sport
Mm-hmm.
that I couldn't find elsewhere, because I was thrust into thinking about life and death things and nihilism and all these big terms that I didn't know what those terms were
At
back
such a
then.
young
At
age.
such a
Yeah.
young age.
Yeah. So go the shift, make a shift there because this is when, I mean, even in high school, right? So you're one of three, and your brother you've mentioned was navigating cancer. And so talk to us about how that, yeah, take us from there. And I am like, Eric is an incredible, I've been able to be on stages with him, shares his story as a way of kicking off a conversation to think about mental health differently. And so it's worth listening to your whole story and hiring him and bringing him in, because it's different. It's just, there's a different disruptive, much needed conversation that can come from listening to your story. And it's like, so I feel like we're not doing its full justice, and can kind of keep the lens on just raising our kids and like what we can learn from this and what we can learn from your experience. So take us through college and then even your, career into sports, and just that with that layer of what you're talking about now of just like what the experience of having illness in your face as a young kid is part of your everyday, and
Yeah,
how that kind of shaped
it
you.
actually works out well, that, because, like, the way that I tell the story is I don't talk about childhood much, and I
Mm-hmm.
really get into my sports career, then go back, because
Yeah.
it's important learning. But knowing that I was 6'4", not 6'8", and knowing that I love sport, I was doing all these internships. I worked for IMG. That's a whole nother story of how I got that job. I worked for the New York Jets. I worked for the British basketball team, the London Towers, when I studied abroad. And so I got a job at the NBA league office right out of college. I was working in David Stern's group, team marketing and business operations, and was traveling around to the NBA teams, delivering what was called business of basketball, which was the players understanding how their salaries come from the revenues, as opposed to a billionaire owner saying, you're worth 3 million, you're worth 8 million,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm just going to give you a check for that amount. Like, no, there's ticket sales revenue, there's sponsorship sales revenue, there's arena rights, there's um you know there's media rights. So them seeing that full pie, and then that their salary cap was a slice of that pie, and then within that slice of that salary cap pie, then there's the veterans minimum and the maximum salary, and like, oh, the wheels start to turn, that when the pie gets bigger, their salary gets bigger. So I did that at the NBA, thought it was like my dream job, and I'm never going to leave that job. And about 5 years into it, my boss at the time, Bernie Mullen, was like considered like the godfather of sports marketing. Like, literally wrote a textbook called Sport Marketing. From the UK, British guy is like, Koos. It's like, and it is like, you need to go and have the X on your back, and show people that you can move numbers yourself. And I wasn't a salesperson. I didn't like sales. I didn't think sales appealed to me. So I was like, I can't. What do you mean put my? He's like, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to send you out to Chicago to help start up a WNBA team, and you'll just be in the sales pit like you're an inside salesperson, making calls, getting people to come out to WNBA basketball games, and you're going to show that you can move numbers by your ingenuity and your affability and blah blah.
What was he seeing for you? Do you know what vision he was holding for you?
Yeah. Well, the vision
What were
he's
you
holding for me is that the revenue side of sports is how you move up, not in
okay.
marketing, not in PR, not in basketball operations. My passion for getting into sports was I'm going to be a general manager. And there was actually a position that I was interviewing for at the time that he told me to pull my resume back from. Stu Jackson, who was a coach of the Knicks, but now is working at the NBA league office. I think now he's with the Big East. I forget which conference he's with right now, but he was the senior vice president of basketball operations, and he was looking for a basketball operations manager at the time. So I went to my boss, Bernie. I was like, "Hey, I'd like to interview for this spot," and he was like, "You move up in this industry on the revenue side of things. When you go on the basketball operations side of things, you get jumped by former players, like no matter how hard you work, right?" So interesting in the context of what we were talking about with
Totally. It's like that's your vehicle, your new vehicle.
right.
Yeah. All right, give it to you. Yeah.
So he's like, go out and I at the time we don't know what's going to come from this role other than I'm basically cheap labor for the team doesn't have enough money when they're starting off because it's a WNBA team and they're the first independently owned WNBA team outside of NBA ownership. That means they don't have the bankroll of the Chicago Bulls. And Jordan had just dominated in that market. And the women are playing in the summer instead of the winter when everyone in Chicago wants to be outside instead of inside. And our games are inside at a college arena instead of at the United Center, right? So you couldn't ask for a more difficult sale. But I guess getting to know the other sales reps, learning what they were doing on the phone, figuring out my own way and being like, I don't want to sell. Like, I don't want to just be like a product dumper. I want to pick up the phone and get to know people, find out what's important to them, and then help position to them what coming out to a game means in terms of fulfilling a need that they have, whether it's daddy-daughter time or whether it's entertaining a client or whatever it was. And no one was sales training me on this. It was kind of trial by fire, just kind of learning it. And so about 6 months into doing that was a really cool gig because I was in Chicago 5 days a week. And then I'd come back on the weekend. So imagine getting all your expenses paid during the week, and then you're come home to have fun with your friends on the weekend.
Home for you, right? Yeah. Still New York. Yeah.
So I do that for 6 months, and I get called into the CEO's office with what was called our account manager. So like the senior person at the NBA who was responsible for the team. And they're like, Eric, we really like what you've done, with helping the sales group, and you're a good teammate helping the other salespeople out. We'd love for you to come on to be our director of sales and service, owing you have 48 hours to decide. Okay. And like, okay, how am I going to make this decision when I've been a New York person my whole life and I'm working for the NBA league office and my friends are going to give me the hardest time in the world that I'm leaving the NBA to go work for a WNBA team, like in a completely different city. Like, what am I going to do here? So ultimately I checked with my mentors because I think that's what you do when you're not sure. And they were like, you're 26 years old. You're not going to get this position in major professional sports outside of the WNBA until you're 31, 32 years old. Like, you got to take this spot and show that you can drive revenues and build a team and train them. And so that was the most unstructured environment I'd ever been in because there wasn't a senior level salesperson for me to learn from. And then, so it was kind of like I made up different categories for competition with each other. And I did different role plays on sales calls without having the formal training, but I think got our staff to a good spot that after 2 years of that, I got noticed to go out to Phoenix and be their director of sales and service for the Suns. It was at a time when they had traded Joe Johnson. And so they were on this great streak. And then they decided to pivot and go a slightly different direction. They still had Steve Nash. They still had Amari Stoudemire. But what I was tasked is we got a sellout streak and we got to keep that sellout streak going. And we just lost 3,000 of our season ticket holders on renewal. So you got to fill that up with group sales. And so the staff that I had there, pinch myself right now, are some of the most senior people in sports and entertainment right now. Danita Johnson is the president of DC United. Bob Hammer is the senior vice president of all of foundational work for Arizona Cardinals. It was a who's who kind of, but they were like 22, 23, 24 years old.
Starting out. Yeah.
Starting out. And I remember saying to that group, like, they would say to me, like, what's our objective? I said, our objective is to tell a great story, right? Like, the great story is, forget numbers for a second, because we'll get there with the numbers, that we took a team that lost 3,000 tickets to renewals, that we weren't all working at the team at the time. And
Mm.
we worked our butt off to keep that sellout streak alive and continuing to go while we continue to work there. So I share that because when you think about like stories that you hold with you, when I left the Suns after 3 years to go be VP of sales and service for the Devils, they gave me a tie with the Suns tie, and they all signed it. And the plaque at the bottom said, "Thanks for helping us tell a great story." Right? So
That's
like, yeah,
awesome.
I'm like kind of tearing up as I'm sharing.
Yeah,
So
that's so powerful.
so I go out to New Jersey with the Devils, and I'm given the keys to oversee all the sales and service department, which sales and service in sports, until you're a chief revenue officer, which ultimately I'll get to with the Panthers, sales and service, you're going up one of two ranks. You're either going up the ticket sales ranks or you're going up the corporate sales ranks. Back to what my boss's vision for me was, like, let's get you going up that ladder so you could eventually be a team president because you've overseen
Mm.
the largest revenue sources. And there's debate in sports still, like, well, if you went up the season ticket sales rank, that's the largest revenue figure that you're managing. So aren't those people the ones who should get the VP of sales spot? But then the group sales people will tell you, no, we manage programs. Programs have renewals and new sales. The season ticket sales people are just
And you you totally have alluded to when Rob was like contemplating different career paths, you're like, sports is territorial.
very territorial. Like,
Yeah.
and like the same person who like is cheering you on is also trying to get the same spot as you. Like
Yeah.
it's there's only 120 of those teams in the whole, or those spots in the whole world. So
Mm-hmm.
so you're frenemies with all these people, which sucks
Mm-hmm.
because there I met some amazing people who are still close friends, and then I met some awful people, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it was type A competitive people who didn't sometimes know how to drop the competition when it came to being a good
Yeah.
human, right?
Yeah.
And so we had an amazing run with the Devils. We took the season ticket base from 4,000 to 11,000, which was like
Wow.
ridiculous because I grew up being an Islander fan, watching the Devils have no fans.
Mm-hmm.
Got to work with amazing people, got to go on a Stanley Cup final run in 2012. Unfortunately, we lost in game 6 to the Kings. So I have rings from the Mercury from Diana Taurasi, but I don't have any rings from the Devils. And then the Florida Panthers new ownership group, the one that's kicking butt right now, there was a military group because Vinny Viola, who owns a team, is a West Point grad. He hired a team president who was a West Point guy who had no sports experience. So they interviewed me. I'm right next door to them because Virtue Financial, which is where their offices are, is in New York City. Matt Caldwell, who was the CEO who just got hired, was at Goldman Sachs from New York City. They're like,
I had no
hey, come
idea.
in our
Yeah. Oh,
office.
interesting.
And
Yeah.
I go into their office, and a guy named Doug Sifu and Vinny Viola are there. And Matt was like, "You're going to meet with them. You'll do great." So I go into this meeting in this huge, like Brewster's Millions boardroom, where huge table, like Vinny and Doug are sitting on one end, like I'm at the other end, and they're explaining to me what they're inheriting, which at the time, it's not a disrespect to the group that was there before, but the way that they were managed, there were tickets being given away in shoeboxes. Like there was no value to the ticket itself. So the turnaround that it takes to get the market to value a ticket and then value sponsorships, it's a long turnaround. Um, and you really have to take tickets away from brokers, take tickets away from comps, build relationships.
Mm-hmm.
These are all things that I knew and I had learned in my career up until that point, but to actually do it in a market like Florida, where at the time people
At the
were
time,
not
exactly.
interested in
Yeah.
hockey in Florida. This is before
And
the.
we got to pause to ask you though, because we're recording this before the playoffs are done. Who are you picking?
I unfortunately, since obviously I'm a partial to loving when you hear the loyalty of the owner. I love the Panthers, but I don't think McDavid's going to be stopped. The competition in sports, when you get to that high level and you've met in the finals before and you got beaten, you're not going to let that other team beat you. And I think Florida's a better team. I think they have a better goalie. But there is
Yeah.
something about when you haven't won it yet and the other team
Yeah.
has, you rise
We'll
to the
see.
next level.
Yeah. Well, this we got two for Panthers in this house, and the rest for
Yeah,
Edmonton.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
So
it's real,
yeah.
but
So so take us into that space, and then kind of what happens next, right?
yeah,
But I want to get us to the place where
yeah,
this experience, right? Yeah, bringing it to the place of what you've learned. Like, yeah, there's so
yeah.
much
So
learning.
so
We'll have to have a part two.
no, for sure. So I am asked to put together a business plan in 24 hours of how I'm going to sell this team. They literally gave me 24 hours. And they're like, send it to us, PDF it. So I get hired in a week. I'm down there in like 3 weeks. And all of a sudden I'm like living in Las Olas, which is a beautiful place. I'm like, they have a relationship with Lexus. I grew up with Oldsmobile. So I have like this nice car, this nice apartment. I'm making more money than I've ever made before. And not that sports is the highest salaries, but relative to what I made before is a nice salary. And my first 6 months there were phenomenal. Like I'm single. I'm hanging out with people that are new and exciting and different. And, we're being given the teas to build a team from scratch. And then all of a sudden I start losing interest in things outside of sport, outside of my work. And I'm not wanting to see friends. I'm not wanting to go to the gym, and I'm not wanting to go out for eats, and we're not wanting to play in rec league games. And I justified that by saying this is the world's way of telling me I need to focus on, what's going on in the office. So I spent even more time in the office, and I got in at 7 instead of 8. And then it got to the point where like I woke up one morning, and you've heard me explain it. Like it was like pushing myself out of quicksand to get out of bed. And I walked like I had cinder blocks on my feet, and I opened the closet and it felt like a bomb had gone off. I couldn't make out whether I should wear a polo or a button down or a suit. I remembered that I had a game that night. So I grabbed the suit with me. I have no recollection of how I drove into the arena, and I go and I just close the door behind me. And I'm like, I can't speak to anyone right now. Like my brain has no capacity to like have a conversation. I'm staring at the computer screen. It looks like a light breaks to me. I can't make out an email. So I'm like sitting there trying to pretend like, okay, if I just get through this day, then I remember, wait a second, I got to give a speech tonight in a suite, because your job as chief revenue officer is to rally up the fans, get them excited about buying season tickets or sponsorships so that your reps can sell them. So still, because I'm a stubborn SOB, I'm pacing in that suite.
Well, and also up to that point, you're like dog on a bone, like that. Just try harder has
Yeah,
worked
try
for
harder
you.
always works. And
Yeah.
if I, even though my brain feels so messed up, even though what happened this morning, if I get through today, tomorrow I'll have a full night's rest again, and maybe that will be what restarts the engine, right? That full night's rest. And so I go into the suite, and I can't think of anything to say, and these prospects are coming in with our reps, and they're waiting for me to say something, and I'm like, "Hi, my name is Eric Hewson. I'm the chief revenue officer with the Panthers. It's great to meet you." And then it felt like someone just literally turned a light switch off in my brain. And I just remember saying, out of desperation, "This is Vinny, our team owner. He's going to take it from here." And I literally walked out of the suite, like almost like someone was controlling my body. And so Vinny came to me and said, like, after the game, "I could tell something's up, but I'm not calling you out anyway. I'm more here to support you. Tell me what you need, and take as much time as you need for it. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. We're continuing to hire more people. We'll have your back. Like, you'll hit the ground running when you come back." So when I hear 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, my mind latches on that 3 month thing. And so I gather everything that I can in a little suitcase. I go back up to New York. At Vinny's recommendation, he's like, "New York's where the best doctors are. That's where the Ivy League doctors are. Go up to them."
But even go back to that moment, like, were you really thinking? Because I'm going back to the mentality that we share, which was like, just work harder. Was there a part of you that was like, oh, like, I'll be all right in a couple
I
days?
was so dysfunctional at that point.
Yeah.
Like I had
Or did
pushed
you
I
know
had
deep
pushed my
down?
brain. No, there
Yeah.
wasn't even a no. There was an
Yeah.
incapable of,
Mm.
like, walking. If people know what true agoraphobia is, like opening my door and seeing someone felt like kryptonite. Like I needed to
Mm.
retreat back into my room. My mother was over at the time because she knew what was going on, and she's like, "Let's at least order in dinner. Like, you don't have to make dinner tonight. I'll take one thing off the plate." I couldn't remember what I'd read on a menu to then
Mm.
recall it back to say it to someone on the phone. And she didn't
Yeah.
believe me. She's like, "That's not possible." So she took out pictures of my nieces. I only had two at the time, Rebecca and Kaylee. And she said, "Okay, what are their names?" And I was like, "Rebecca and Kaylee." She's like, "What are their middle names?" I couldn't remember their middle names.
Mm.
Okay. These are girls that I speak to on the phone all the time. So like my that what we know as dorsal vagal shutdown now, which I had no idea was back then. All I'm thinking is the chemicals in my brain are so messed up in some way, because that's the only way we believe that there's something wrong with our brain, that it must be this soup of chemicals that got messed up in some way over some time from something that I ate or from having a traumatic brain injury from when I was younger. Or maybe when I go back to New York, they're going to do an MRI and find out that I had a brain tumor. And so I'm at the time, which is, by the way, just dysregulating me more and more and more, but I don't know what dysregulation is. And it was to the point where, like, I'm still an employee of the team and there's still things that they need from me, even though I'm checking out. So in their mind, they don't know the level of dysfunction that I'm at.
Right.
So having a call with me once a night just to catch up to them, oh, we're leaving Eric alone. For me, I'm going, I can't order something off of a menu. And yet I'm going to have a conversation with them about what I did last week and why I moved a certain number from one column to the next about our projections. Like, how in the hell am I going to do that? And so your body can reach a point. It's scary to say it out loud, but people need to hear it. We've all experienced it because you and I have had the conversations for periods of time now since I've gotten better. It lasts for 3 hours or even a day. I was having what ended up being 2.5 years, but at the time before I left Florida, a number of days in a row of absolute breakdown of a nervous system that you cannot function as a human being.
And I think that I'm just like thinking of, one of the things that you said to me early on when we first connected was just like, I don't mind going through the wall first and being like, getting all bloodied, like just kind of like punching this message out, like breaking down walls to have these conversations. But I'm thinking about the people that still in 2025 counter it, like, get out of here with that. Like, come on, like, just try harder, right? Like, or like, that's not like, and just this idea of really pausing to think about like, we're humans with this nervous system, and your nervous system was in shutdown, right? So we have the scale behind me for people watching. It's like, right, we're talking about that red zone sinking, but this idea of, yeah, like that can happen. And this journey that you went on to, we really do need to do a part 2. And I also want to honor your time. I just like the story. This is why it's so important to bring Eric wherever you are and to listen. You've talked to elementary kids all the way up through corporate boardrooms and colleges in between. So yeah. So what, right? Take us, I mean, I know we're going to have to snapshot just for now to kind of land the plane in terms of this journey and what you learned, but 2.5 years, you say it, but like really thinking about 2.5 years, like 2.5 years of not knowing what was going on with you, trying all these different things. So speak into that.
I thought in that, so I did not leave my bed, but for going to the doctor once a week for attempted talk therapy. And then once every 4 weeks for a change in medication. I laid in my bed. And for people who think, again, try harder.
Yeah.
I was unable to move. Like I would put on a show and my mom would want to sit and watch the plot with me. I couldn't follow a plot line. One of my favorite things to do when I'm lazy now is to sit and listen to sports talk radio or listen to a podcast. My brain couldn't make sense of what was being said. Like when you say to people who are skeptical about it, like your brain is an orchestra and it makes sense of all of the different string section and brass section and percussion section, and it makes it sound like Mozart for what you're seeing around the world. When those instruments are out of tune or sections are turned off completely, it doesn't seem like a piece of music that you recognize or understand. So the world doesn't seem the same to you. Like there's no other way to describe it. Parts of the brain literally turn off, and maybe good part, like a good number of parts of the brain. So 52 meds over those 2.5 years, all thinking.
50, just pause though. Like you say this because you share your story a lot. Like 52 different medicines.
Yeah.
Like
all justified by these experts, right? Because they're called psychopharmacologists. And psychopharmacologists are people who mix medications. So in their world, the 4 or 5 at a time and then switch, 4 or 5 at a time and then switch is justified because they haven't found the right cocktail, as they call it, of combination of meds together that pop you out to balance out your imbalance.
Right.
So when there are that many to try, and when from the time you were a little kid, you know that I use this all the time, but I think it sinks in with people when I say it. We grew up, we got strep throat, bronchitis, and pneumonia. We went to the nice man or woman in the lab coat, smiley face, and the stethoscope. They took our temperature and they checked us out and they said, "You have fill in the blank of the name of the thing. So when you tested positive for strep throat, you were given the medication, the antibiotic, and then all of a sudden you felt better in 2 days. So why wouldn't it make sense that when you're feeling sick, which feels like a flu, when you're shut down and your nervous system is not working, part of it is lethargy and fatigue and inability to get up and brain fog and malaise. Why wouldn't it make sense then that you're trying to find? So I thought I was doing all the right things. For people who are saying try harder, I was trying. I felt like I was on a treadmill every single day, even though I was laying in my bed because
Where was the, like, speak into the myths? Like, what have you learned now? So we're going to jump. I want, when you come back, I want us to explore more deeply, like the roots of the foundation. So the nonprofit, the work that we're doing in the world. But this conversation here of this, when, like, why wouldn't they? Like, I mean, most people still believe, actually 80% of
right.
people still believe, like, okay, this, like, so something's wrong, like, that makes sense. Like, so why doesn't it make sense? I guess, what have you learned since to know, like, hold on, here's what was actually happening?
Because the chemicals in our brain, for which now you threw out a number like 80%, the latest, largest metadata study shows that people who take SSRIs, which is the most common form of antidepressant medication, only see a lift in mood, is what they call it, in 15, not 50, 15% of the cases. So the success stories that people hear from that give people hope to go, they don't know that the number's 15. They just hear the success stories, and the success stories are what's sold, right? But even in those success stories, what are you doing? Are you healing the rest of the body? This is where the learning came in the work that we do. Your chemicals being off is a byproduct of all these other structures in your body that end up leading to the formation of neurochemicals, by the way, primarily in your gut, then not being able to create what they need to send up to your brain so that you can have the neurochemical. And that's, by the way, even of the piece that you feel off that is neurochemical related. Like, there's a lot of science that says when you're not releasing acetylcholine through your vagus nerve because you've lost vagal tone, your body feels awful from that. When you just have chronic systemic inflammation, your body feels awful from that. So neurochemicals is one of the pieces. And the analogy that I give people to understand that is, if you had a house and there was a huge rainstorm coming over, and the house that you owned, it was the house that you loved, the only one house that you held on to is so important to you, and there were holes in the foundation, in the floors, in the ceilings, in the walls, in the attic, and the roof. And someone's like, I got a way to make sure that your house doesn't go down when this huge rainstorm comes around. I'm going to give you this really thick tarp. We're going to drape the tarp over the roof, and the rain's never going to come in. And that works for a little bit for the first 3 days of the storm, and the storm continues to go on, and the rain gets heavy, goes into the divots in that tarp. And then eventually, because you had all those holes in your house that you never fixed, now all of a sudden, literally, as the water comes in, the house comes crashing down, as opposed to having little leaks, right?
Another one of your analogy, I think that's one of the most brilliant, like, the way that you take just like these complex concepts in neuroscience and psychology and the places and spaces that we live in every day. For someone listening, it's like, okay, well, connect the dots for me, Eric. Like, what happened? Like, what actually did happen? Like, how did you go from living your best life, like all these little like success stories of hard things that you persevered through? Yes, your brother was sick, and also like what happened?
Right. So when I met the psychologist who helped me put this together, I'll speed through it for the purposes of, she asked me to tell her about the story of my life, and gave me no rules, which anyone who's trying to get to know how someone's doing, that's hopefully a good takeaway. Like, don't be asking someone what's wrong in your life, or what are you struggling with, or what's the relationship with your mother, right? Instead, go, I want to get to know about you. There's no rules. Share with me. And then if you want to get them started, you could share a little bit about yourself, which shows that you're creating the safe space. But she created the safe space for me. And I shared a lot about my childhood when I was telling her about the story about my life. But my older brother breaks his femur bone in a body cast for a year, then cancer for 5 years, goes in remission, then Jeep accident, cracks his head open, loses partial vision in his eye, then heals from that, goes to college, relapse to leukemia. So now he's got to get stronger chemo because of this, having cancer for the second time. His body eventually breaks down from having so much chemo, 105 fever, goes into septic shock into a coma. And now that he's in a coma, he's in it for 3 months. We don't know if he's going to wake or have any brain activity. He wakes, miracle, full cognitive faculties, but his kidneys fail from being in the septic shock for so long. We all get tested to see who might be the closest donor match. My dad donates a kidney to him. That's successful. And then when I graduate and go get that dream job at the NBA, three of my close friends, 22, 23, 24 years of age that I grew up with, passed away back to back to back. So I rushed through that to share that because of what the woman said to me at that point when you asked, how did I put this all together? She goes, Eric, what else happened to you as a child and a young adult that impacted your mental health? This was 50 minutes into a 60-minute session where I had been speaking the whole time. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean impacted my mental health? And she said, well, what do you mean was an impact? I said, I told you about the story of my life at 4 and I got up to 24. From 24 to 33, before I had this chemical imbalance thing, I was running sales for the Suns, the Panthers, and the Devils and the Panthers. Like my brain was fine during that time. And this is where she explained to me the mud example that we use. She said, you had a front row seat. I'll skip the NBA example to make it shorter. She's like, your front row seat was watching your brother in a muddy wrestling match against a game of life and your friends in a muddy wrestling match against a game of life and probably other things that were muddy wrestling matches too with other people in your life. But what you knew was the wrestling matches were going on, but you were focused on everything else in the arena. So for sports parents, it's great that your kids are so passionate and focused on the sport that they're playing. But back to what you asked me, why was I dog on the bone about competition? That gave me so much purpose and identity that I wasn't focused on how the mud from the ring was splattering and hitting me and caking up and building on me. That mud that's splattering and hitting me is what chronic stress, not stress, because stress can be good, chronic stress over time and trauma is that makes these physiological and biological changes that disconnects the brain and the body. And so once that was explained to me by her, my skeptical response was, that makes sense for me. Awesome. Thanks for letting me know. Makes sense for no one else in the rest of society. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, because if all it takes is having a front row seat to watch wrestling matches of what other people in your life are going through, watching your parents get fights and gets divorced, watching your parents lose their job and lose the house, watching your two best friends get in a fight and never speak to each other, moving to yes,
like it's real stuff.
Yes, yeah. Like being the new kid in town,
riding the bench, like that experience.
Ride the bench is big. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the events, so that people don't think you have to have been through major events. It's the thoughts that we tell ourselves related to the events that dysregulate the nervous system as much as, maybe sometimes even more than the events themselves. Because what does my brain go if I'm on the bench? Oh, I'm never going to go play college and play soccer, and I'm never going to get a scholarship, which means I might not be able to go to the college that I want to, right? Like, you could make up all these narratives.
Experience inside. And then one of our people that we work with too, she said, it's not just the event. It's not what happens to you. It's not just what happens to you because of the event. I'm like,
it's what happens inside you.
I need to restart. It's what happens inside of you because of the event and also because of what doesn't happen. What happens and what doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. That was all jumbled. Hopefully that landed. But this idea of the internal experience. And so right. So for your like life, you're accumulating this mud. And then by the time that you get to the Panthers and that moment that you described, it's like just, it had built up, just like we talk about plaque in the arteries. So I want to zoom out to the bigger picture and the collective, and definitely going to put a pin and have you back. I'll pull you back in for conversation. I just think of like, just in the news, right? There was like a stabbing at a game, at a youth sporting event, and a fist fight, and yelling. And I've been the parent. I've slammed in class. Like, as humans, I just think like one of the takeaways, there's so many in this conversation, but is like, we all have mud. Like, we all have our stuff, and that then impacts how we are seeing the world, seeing each other, seeing ourselves. Yeah. What would you say through your experiences now? We're fast forwarding, but we're going to come back to it. It's like your experience in working with, like, I mean, I don't even know how many professional players and athletes, right? And high level executives that are very successful, all the way down to elementary school kids, just this kind of range of humans that you get to work with. What would you want sport parents to know about their humans, these children of theirs, as they're navigating these spaces, and of themselves as we're like watching Whoop scores go up and having these own experiences ourselves? What would you want them to know about mental health?
Well, I think why parents love watching their kids in sport is because there's a cause and effect. So like, they practice harder, they got in the gym more, they watched more film, it led to greater success. I, as a parent, either drove them to that, or meaning like actual physically drove, or I was their coach and I was a part of that. And so I feel a part of their success, or I feel good for them. And not surprisingly, I'm answering you with an analogy. If you get someone to try to increase their vertical jump and you're their coach and you go, jump on the box, jump on the box, jump on the box. And the first couple of days are like, coach, this is awful. I hate this. I'm sweating. I'm hitting my knees. And then, oh, wow, after a week, the vertical leap goes up by a half an inch. Everyone's high fiving. Okay. And then after 3 weeks, the vertical leap goes up an inch and a half. Everyone's high fiving. Eventually, you get up to a 3 inch increase in your vertical leap. Everyone's high fiving. What you don't realize is that the practice that you're doing, that son of yours or daughter of yours is carrying an invisible backpack of bricks. And so the 3 inches could have been 4.5, could have been 5. So I'm only saying that I don't want to make sport all about performance. I try to shake people who are looking at.
Well, no, that's really actually, I don't think I've heard you say it that way, because I talk about, you just bring the analogy in and it's like, okay, because I talk about it's actually like like when we're not washing off the mud, when we're not tending to ourselves and caring, when we're not building the inner agility, then we actually are hindering our performance. But the way that you bring it to life is like that mud, like think of it in terms of bricks in an invisible backpack. And if we're not, at some point it's going to wear us down, right?
Or prevent you from reaching the potential. Like we're watching someone improve. So we're like, they're doing all the things that they need to do. They're getting better. And you're like, no, you're being held back by so many other things that you're not washing off, because in sports, it's cooler to call it mental toughness and mental performance. So when we do visualization and we do all these other things, and then you combine that with the strength and conditioning, like what your husband does, okay, well, we're seeing improved performance. And we're not thinking about what is still lingering and carrying on that's holding us back. That, oh, by the way, not only hurts our performance, but is going to eventually lead to a crash when that keeps getting heavier and heavier and you've not worked on those things. So
to drain it. That's
so
it.
so it's
Yeah,
duly
no.
important.
So that piece of just like, we all have mental health, like it's on a continuum, and all of us, my mentor, Greg would call it baggage. Like, oh, we all have baggage. Like, we all have mud. And so the ability of kind of leaving people hanging and a little bit maybe wanting for the next conversation is like, okay, so what? So now what do we do? And I think a place to start would be the Scale, like the Scale app, downloading it. I cannot tell you. I can be looking at my daughter who's off to, like, she's out in the back shooting, she's working out, she's running up and down the hill, like she's going to practice and doing all these things, and like seem like she's okay. And then like I'll pop that up and say, like, where are you actually at? And it's like, oh, like I'm in surviving. Oh, well, like what's contributing? What's going on? Right. And so that for me, I'm a huge advocate of it, because it's a place to start. Because like, where do you start? How do you have these conversations? And it doesn't all have to be solved overnight, but the awareness piece, and then the ability to bring in language and start to see our kids as humans. Yeah, more on that. So we'll pause it here. Do you have any last words that you want to share just with people that are listening?
No, I think the intersection, I'll give a plug to you of what you're bringing together. I think that there's content out there for the sport parent generally. I think there's content out there for like, how do I get my kid into the
Do well in the
recruitment
ACTs.
space, and making sure that they have the right resume or that they've got the right game footage and highlight reels. But this is such important conversation because it's healing for both the athlete and the parent themselves. And that's very much needed. And I think, hopefully maybe this would be a good way to leave. Like, your relationship with your child through your sport is not the relationship that continues after they finish playing sport. And if you want to maintain a positive relationship with them, figuring these other pieces out of who they are as a human is so important to what that post-sport life looks like in terms of your relationship with them. And probably right now you're so focused on the sport because you're thinking about, how am I getting them to the highest level? How am I going to get them to succeed? But zoom out, like you were saying, and look at that bigger picture. How am I connecting with them as human to human? I think is key.
So
Yeah.
it's everything. All right, we'll land there and then have you back.
Awesome.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Eric.